What's up, Roughnecks Nation? Welcome to Roughnecks Rundown. I'm Ace.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up.
All right, guys, in this episode, we're going to break down the three quarterbacks on the Roughnecks roster. And at the end, I'm going to give my personal opinion on who I think is going to be QB1, 2, and 3 on the roster going into game 1. So the first thing we should do is let's look at the quarterbacks physically. We have three quarterbacks that are very different heights. Let's look at Nolan Henderson. Nolan Henderson is 5'11". He's not the tallest quarterback in the league. He's basically the UFL's Drew Brees. Then we have Jalen McClendon, who comes in at a whopping 6'5". Lastly, we have Anthony Brown, who is a respectable 6'1". So you may be thinking, how much does height really matter in this quarterback battle in camp? Well, a decent amount, because last year we saw CJ Johnson and quarterbacks coach Eric Price put in Guarantano and Reed Sinnett over Nolan Henderson. While Nolan Henderson gave him a punching chance in every game, he doesn't have your typical quarterback body build that you're looking for in a professional quarterback. So he had to wait his turn. When you're going into this year, he is still the shortest quarterback, but because he's the only returning quarterback, maybe that gives him an edge. All right, so let's look at speed, because in spring football, we all know that a quarterback has to be able to move. You have to be able to improvise and you have to be able to scramble, because the hardest position to get in spring football is offensive line, so they're not always the best. Let's go descending order. So our slowest quarterback is going to be Jalen McClendon, who is also the oldest quarterback. He's coming in with a 4.82 40 time. Next is going to be White Lightning Nolan Henderson, coming in at a 4.55 40 time, which is very respectable and very helpful when you don't have the height to be able to escape the pocket and use that kind of speed. Last, we have Anthony Brown, who is coming in at a 4.49 40, which is really, really fast. It was one of the fastest quarterback times, if not the fastest quarterback time in his draft class, yet he was still undrafted. When we're looking at these three quarterbacks, it's huge to look at the speed, like I said, because you have to be able to move out of the pocket. We've seen Anthony Brown do it in the NFL. We've seen Nolan Henderson do it in the UFL. And Jalen McClendon is the one that is the least likely to run out of the three. Now let's talk about age. This could go into how much a quarterback is willing to run. Jalen McClendon is 29 years old. He is 3 years older than the other two quarterbacks on the roster, who are both 26. They're fairly young in their professional career. Jalen McClendon, like I said earlier, is the least likely to run, which could be because he's a little bit older in age and he knows that he's a little bit more susceptible to injury. Now let's look at college. We're just going to compare their senior years so that it's a little more apples to apples, because once you get to spring football quarterbacks deeper into their professional career, you're looking at a lot of different leagues and a lot of different stats to the point where it's hard to get just an even comparison. So we're just going to look at their senior years in college. Nolan Henderson is one of the most prolific quarterbacks to come out of the University of Delaware. Go Blue Hens. In his senior year, he racked up a 64.5 completion percentage, a 3.5 to 1 touchdown to interception ratio. He had 7.3 pass yards per completion, and he averaged 1.6 yards per rush. Now, that's a little bit skewed. They played a lot of offense, and he honestly had a lot more plays on offense than some of the other quarterbacks that we're going to talk about. The second newest quarterback we have is Jalen McClendon. He is a former Baylor Bear, which, if you could see in my background, so am I. So I have a soft spot for him. In his senior year, he didn't play that much, but he racked up a 60.4 completion percentage, a 1-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, and he got a whopping 13 yards per completion passing, which is crazy, but also a much smaller sampler size than we're going to get from the other two quarterbacks who started an entire season. He racked up 3 yards per rush, which is incredibly respectable. But like I said earlier, as he's gotten on in his career, he's rushing less and less. The last and newest quarterback that we're going to talk about is Anthony Brown. Coming out of the University of Oregon his senior year, he had a 60.4 completion percentage, a 2.7 to 1 touchdown to interception ratio, 7.7 yards per pass completion, and then 4.4 yards per rush. He has by far the best rush yards per attempt, which is impressive because he has the second largest sample size from his senior year besides Nolan Henderson. Now, it's hard to get apples to apples, and I know that I'm just doing a quick comparison of the three quarterbacks, but we're about to get into training camp and we're going to get our answers coming up quickly anyway. When we're comparing the three quarterbacks, I like to look at who do I think CJ would like. The fans are going to think one thing, I can think another, but CJ Johnson and Eric Price, the quarterback's coach and passing game coordinator, are going to be the people who are going to go and make that decision at the end of the day. I think they're three very similar quarterbacks with varying ceilings, but about the same floor. I like Jalen McClendon. I think he brings a veteran presence to the locker room, and he has a lot of upside, but he's been a perennial backup in spring football, which doesn't bode well for him to win this competition against two guys that are just raw quarterback talent. When we're talking about Nolan Henderson, we're talking about a guy who ended the season last year, giving us by far the most explosive and exciting Roughnecks offense to watch thus far. But he didn't manage to win that many games, so there's still things that we want to know about Nolan's gameplay. Lastly, we have Anthony Brown, who has by far the most upside of these three quarterbacks. He's got a close to prototypical NFL body type. He's got a big arm. He's got fantastic mobility, and he's the fastest on the roster. He's also the most recent to have been on an NFL roster, where he was picked up by the Bills, the Ravens, and the Arizona Cardinals in order to try and mimic the play of Lamar Jackson at practice, even at the Ravens practice where Lamar Jackson actually was. Now, before I can make my decision on who I think is going to be first, second, and third, I need to look at the quarterback battle from last year. We had Guarantano, Reed Sinnett, and returning Nolan Henderson. The big thing was that who showed what in practice. Guarantano was the most polished and looked the most ready at practice, but when it came to games, he didn't look as prepped as he could have been. Reed Sinnett apparently was not throwing his best balls at practice, but he's a gamer, and he came in and showed that when it mattered, he was incredibly accurate and poised in the pocket. And then lastly, we had Nolan Henderson, who had incredible upside, is a great improviser, and is just a gunslinger. But he's the shortest of the three quarterbacks, and he had the weakest arm. So CJ and Eric Price both decided to go with the guys who were the more prototypical NFL types and looked like a professional quarterback. Last year, the two taller and more prototypical NFL quarterbacks got the nod before gunslinger and improviser Nolan Henderson. But Nolan Henderson also had a fiery end to the season where he got a lot of Roughnecks fans more excited than they had been for the rest of the otherwise disappointing season. Do I think that this is going to give Nolan Henderson the edge to beat out the two other quarterbacks? I'm not sure. We can't just give it all at once. Let's go backwards. At quarterback 3, I have Jalen McClendon. Jalen McClendon is a veteran. He's the oldest, he's the slowest, and he's the least likely to run and do improvisational quarterbacking. So he's going to get third place for me in this battle. Jalen McClendon hasn't been able to beat out other quarterbacks for the starting position in the UFL last season and the XFL before and XFL 2.0 before that. He sometimes comes in when quarterbacks are having a bad game, but otherwise he's never just won a battle straight out to end training camp. Coming in at number 2, I have Nolan Henderson. Now, I love Nolan Henderson, and I think that they're going to have packages for him because he is willing to put his body on the line and run more than I think the other two quarterbacks are wanting to. Nolan Henderson has a ton of upside, but he's also a little inaccurate at times and can put the ball in danger's way. I think Nolan gets the nod over Jalen McClendon because he's a returning quarterback. He already knows the playbook, which is a humongous step up, and he has a rapport with the coaching staff and all of the returning players. But I don't think that it gives him the edge over who I have at number 1. Anthony Brown. Anthony Brown is the most recent to be in the NFL. He mimics Lamar Jackson's play at times, and he spent seasons on practice squads and even got sniped and taken by the Raiders from the Baltimore practice squad because they liked what they saw. When you look at Anthony Brown playing in the preseason, he really did show some greatness at times. He looks like he just needs a little bit of polishing to get him over that edge so that he can go back up to the league and possibly start trying to get a backup quarterback position. I don't know about you, but that sounds like the exact quarterback that the UFL is trying to go for. So there you have it, guys. From the Roughnecks expert himself, I say number 3 is going to be Jalen McClendon. Quarterback 2 is going to be Nolan Henderson with some packages mixed in. But starting week 1, I believe Anthony Brown is going to have that green sticker on his helmet. He's going to be coming in, and he's going to lead us to a victory week 1 against the St. Louis Battlehawks. Now, this is definitely going to be the most polarizing of the position videos that I'm going to post. So let me know in the comments what you think, where you think I got it wrong, and who you believe will be quarterback 1 going into week 1 of the UFL season against the St. Louis Battlehawks in the UFL season opener. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching the UFM United Football Media. If you like that, please make sure to like and subscribe. Also, if you want more videos, you can check them out on our channel over here. The best one for you is right here. And then if you liked mine, the rest of my playlist is right here. Thank you guys, and I hope to see you next time.